Yeah, so man, I'm just, how how personal is it for you? I mean, how do you experience love? What was your path? What were your experiences? We can go all into that,
Loads of topic stuff
I would
there.
to have a one-on-one conversation about what the course means to you. That's basically it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, I've been in December, I will have been studying the course on and off, but it will have been the sort of the foundation of my life and spiritual practice for 43 years. And I'm only 63, so that's a good chunk of my life. Um, and it's gone through many phases, but at this point, I can truly say, not only am I studying it, but perception itself really does start to change. The world begins to feel quite dreamlike in some respects,
Wow.
which doesn't mean that you don't get hooked, and you get pulled back into the ego's insanity. But when you do get pulled back into the ego's insanity, you recognize it much more quickly. Bill Thetford was once asked, and this isn't my story, it's out there in the community. He was once asked, how do you know if you're making progress? What metrics can we use? How can we tell? And he said, well, how long do you hold a grievance? Uh, you know, and I take that even further. How quickly are you even aware that you are holding a grievance? Because until you're aware of it, you can't do anything about it.
Mhm.
Um, and better still, how aware are you of situations that are likely to trigger grievances or specialness, and enter them already with help, with knowing that, he goes there with me. So I think that, that's, you get to a place where, you don't make any decisions without help. Because, if you do, they just don't work.
Wow. Well, Dr.
Yeah.
Bob Rosenthal, here we are already. I was going to say, let's start the interview, and we already did. So thank you. I'm just going to use that too.
Cut that part out. Yeah, that's
Oh,
good.
yes. Let's just jump in and say hello to everyone. And this was a great, great introduction. So welcome, Dr. Robert Rosenthal, co-president of the Foundation of Inner Peace. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes. It's a pleasure to be here, although the beauty of the virtual world is I don't know where here even is. We're united in a virtual oneness.
Yeah, that isn't that a nice metaphor? That's really cool.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah. So we were speaking about grievances, and I would say, well, grievances, guilt, and all this negative stuff could be easily called the opposite of love.
Yes.
What we also would like to talk about. Um, it's beautiful. It's great to have you here, and I'm really excited to hear from you. Also, personal experiences. How was your path? How is your path with A Course in Miracles? How is your awakening going, and so forth? So yeah, let's hit it
I
right
always
there.
joke that if you ask someone, are you enlightened? And they say, yes, I am enlightened. They can't be enlightened because in enlightenment, there's no I. So you could say enlightenment happens or enlightenment is, or you can, I guess, borrow a temporary sense of identity and say, yes, the I that I am not is no longer. But I can certainly talk about my path. I think that, when I learned of the topic, awakening to love, which is, it's a wonderful topic. It is what the course is all about. Um, I started thinking, well, what would be some of the things that I would want to share and emphasize about that? And I think, there would be sort of two components of that, or two parts. One would be, right out of the introduction to the course, this course does not aim to teach the meaning of love, for that's beyond what can be taught. It aims at removing the blocks to your awareness of love's presence. So if we're awakening to love, it's a great word, awakening, like, oh, we were asleep and we roll over, or the alarm clock goes off and suddenly we wake up and, there's love everywhere. And some people want to treat it that way. As a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, though, I think that we can use our spirituality as a defense to avoid looking at those blocks to the awareness of love's presence. Ken Wapnick was very focused on this. So on the one hand, if we're going to awaken to love, what we really want to be doing is looking at where are we asleep to love? Where are we blocked? And that would be, bring us right to the arena of where do we have grievances and where do we enshrine specialness? Where do we make specialness special in our lives? Because they're really two halves of the same coin, two sides of the same coin. The ego likes to put some things on a pedestal because it needs to give us something to worship so that we believe that it's valid and that we can stay in this world of illusion and get something out of it. But it's also, the ego is a jealous God, small g, and it's a little petty tyrant, and it stomps its feet, and anybody who threatens it in any way, it doesn't like that. So there are grievances everywhere. And I think that in my experience, and this is personal as well as professional as a psychotherapist, you start with the big grievances, the obvious ones. That person from high school that you hated and haven't talked to in 10, 20, 30 years, and you still think of, and and your teeth clench. You start with those because they're so obvious. But then you begin to forgive those. And forgiving doesn't mean saying to the person, oh, all those abuses that you heaped on me, oh, that's just fine. As the Course says, forgiveness recognizes that what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. That's really powerful. It hasn't occurred. What the Course does is it's a blanket amnesty. It says everything you thought happened in the past didn't happen because the past doesn't exist. So rather than you're forgiving someone by excusing their bad behavior, which of course is forgiving to destroy, puts you on a pedestal and now you're the better person, what you're really doing is saying, oh, I was mistaken. And they were mistaken too. So if we're both mistaken, why am I still holding on to this? However, as time goes on, you begin to focus on, the more day-to-day grievances. I guess there's no order of difficulty in miracles, and there's no order of degree in grievances either. Even the tiniest one will take you off your path and send you skidding into, the valley of ego. So what do I mean by small grievances? Well, for those of us who drive cars, and I've driven on the Autobahn, which is actually far more sane than American highways. But what about that person who came up behind you hard and stayed on the back of your car, tailgating we call it? What about the person who just shot you a dirty look? I joke that anyone who has children has had the experience of watching your grown child look at you in a certain way, and you go, what did I do? And they go, what do you mean? Well, you were just looking at me. No, I wasn't. And husbands and wives, my wife will say, what now? And I'm like, what? And it gets to, oh, I was thinking about something in my head, and you saw the expression on my face, and you thought it was about you. And it wasn't. But it's a really good example of how minds are joined. We do interpret these things as if they were about us. And when we are lost in our own minds, thinking about something from the past, some grievance, something that bothered us, some insult or shame, it's reflected outward, and it does affect everyone around us, and that's not even looking at the psychic transmission. So, as time goes on, you become more aware of those as well, and you want to let go of them. You want to release them. You want to dispel them. And dispel is a good word, because in English, to spell, in addition to being about letters, it's putting a trance on somebody, casting a spell. So we're dispelling, we're removing the spell of the ego. We're waking up from how it's bound us in its world and kept us in grievances. And then finally, you get to what seem to be the tiniest of grievances, which really are the constant, relentless judgments that the ego mind makes every second about every person that it encounters and about every situation that it finds itself in. And when you really, yeah, exactly. And when you start to see it at that level, at first there's a sense of hopelessness. Oh my God, I'm doing this all the time.
Yeah.
What's the matter with me? But in truth, it's a good point, because you are seeing how much of a prisoner you are for the first time. And you can't wake up until you know you're asleep. You can't escape from prison or be released from slavery until you know you're a prisoner, or until you know that you've been enslaved. So you begin to see, whether it's in the car or walking down the street, oh, this one looks good. She's hot. Oh, he looks terrible. That person looks arrogant. And, this one looks really smart, probably smarter than I am. I mean, we are making such judgments. Oh, they're not from my country. That one's darker than I am. That one's lighter than I mean, over and over and over. Even in the arena of spirituality, who's enlightened, who's not, I mean, my God, it's relentless. And so when you get to that place, how do you handle it? You don't try to take away each little tiny judgment. You go to that blanket amnesty that is the atonement, and you say, Holy Spirit, take this from me and look upon it, judging it for me. I don't know anything. I can't judge anything. That is the place of real power, when we realize that our minds, our judgments are screwy. They get us nowhere, even if we think they're really good. I was talking to someone I knew in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. We were in my first Course in Miracles group together. He was a practicing psychiatrist at the time. I was still studying. I was, in medical school. And of course, I went on to become a psychiatrist, and he reached out to me recently, and he's still a Course student. And he was sharing how, as a psychiatrist putting the Course into practice, he can no longer do what we think we were supposed to do, which is, help people feel better about their egos. and I sort of laughed, because I had come to the same realization. And what I'd been doing the last 4 or 5 years of my psychotherapy practice was just, offering the entire session to the Holy Spirit before it started. Give me the words. I always use the prayer, which is on page 28 of the English book. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me, etc., etc. And what starts happening is people just start changing. People in their lives who they had grievances with suddenly show up and in a different way, and they have these conversations that are positive. And that's what this man was, he said, yeah, the transformation is incredible of what's happening, but we realize it's not happening because of anything we are doing. As the Course says, I need do nothing. It's happening because of what we're allowing in our own mind, that then generalizes and transfers that knowledge, that learning, knowledge in the little sense of the word, not the Course's sense, that transfer of learning to other people. So this is what's so cool, is you get to that place where you realize you really don't have to do anything. This is not, you don't need a doctoral degree. You don't need to know how to, fly a plane. I mean, you just need to accept atonement for yourself, and then your world will begin to transform. And this is how we save the world. I know there are course students who feel that action in the world is very important. If that's your guidance, by all means, go ahead. But be very clear, when you act in the world, you are acting as a physical body, hoping to influence or impact other physical bodies, even if that action is seen as good. Oh, I want to give people food. Yeah, that might be great. But ultimately, as being stuck in this web of illusion, we don't know anything. We don't know what anything is for, and therefore, even our well-intended actions are likely to misfire and go wrong. Jesus tells us right in the miracle principles that he's the only one who gets to direct, or maybe it's in chapter 1, one of the sections, he's the only one who gets to direct where miracles go, because he's got the big picture. The Holy Spirit's got the big picture. We don't know. And consciously directed miracles, yeah, that's coming from us. So I can't say, I want miracles for you, Armin, and well, we can say it, but it's not terribly helpful. What I can do is attempt to see you and everyone that I encounter as the Son of God, just like me. And that's really our task, it's to overlook, to look over, to look past, to look beyond the ego's judgments and see who's really there, which is actually looking in the mirror. When you do that, you're no longer seeing the body or the personality. Those are just, I like to think of them as swirling clouds that, they make a face at some point, and then they make a monster, and then they make an angel. But they're just clouds drawing pictures in the sky. That's what our personalities and bodies are. They don't have any real reality, any permanent existence. And so you look past them. You look to the light. And it's not always easy to do. And when you can't do it, you realize, okay, I can't do it, but I would like to do it. The willingness is key. Even if you can't get there, to be willing to get there will ultimately get you there. So all right, let me shut up and let you say a few things.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bob. It just comes to mind, then you could also say that there is two different ways of changing your mind. I mean, usually we understand, someone, they have the better arguments, they have the right opinion about the president or whatever, and then I change my mind because he just told me the right things. But here it's something completely different, because I don't even know where to change my mind to. And I need to leave that open, because the universal wisdom, or the universal inspiration, as the Course says, calls the Holy Spirit to, it's something completely, to me, as I know myself and everything else, that's completely new. That's something that's so out of range that I don't even know where to start. So change your mind is not, changing your opinion, I would say.
Exactly. Well, it really gets to what I would say is the fundamental teaching of the Course, which is you think you have a mind that thinks and makes decisions, and you don't. That's an illusion. That's the ego mind. So really, when we change our mind, we are changing from the ego mind to our real mind, with a capital M, and we're not very familiar with that mind. It doesn't disappear. I mean, that's the beauty and the safety of the atonement. We can't undo who we are. God created us as God's son, so that's it. But we don't know that mind. So changing our mind is not working within the tiny local mind that we have been taught is our true self. It's changing to that big mind. I will use this here as a moment for shameless self-promotion. I have a book coming out in hopefully a month or two, maybe by the end of November, they tell me, that is on A Course in Miracles, but it's using ideas that are not from the Course to get to the Course. And the title is From Nevermind to Evermind. I have an early copy here. It's not available yet, but there we go. Probably won't focus it. But that's the whole idea. We are changing from a mind that never existed and that will never make you happy, and that that never is satisfied. It's, you know, always seek and do not find, to Evermind, which is always present, always has been, always will provide happiness, joy, peace, because that's what it is. So the fundamental, you know, teaching of the Course, it's, you know, I joke in some of the murder mysteries, you know, they get the wrong suspect and they say, oh, it's a case of mistaken identity. You know, we thought you were Mr. Smith and you're not. Well, the whole ego world is one big case of mistaken identity. We all think we are what we're not. And A Course in Miracles gradually, gently, but definitively wakes us up to love, to our real identity. And as we begin to sample that and taste that in our lives, as we begin to see how relationships transform and people we thought that we could never forgive, we actually do end up liking them and loving them. As we see that, then you know, we recognize it works. I've had people say to me, you know, I looked at that Course in Miracles, it's nuts. How do you do that thing? And I say, well, you know, from the perspective of where you and I live, I agree. It's upside down. It's totally radical. It's insane. But what if we're the ones who are insane and it's actually trying to get through and teach us sanity? You know, if we live in a nightmare world of all delusions and suddenly someone appears like this master psychotherapist who is telling us, you're insane and here's how you can get out of it, we would say to them, no, you're taking away everything that's precious to us. Go away, we don't want you. And so I say the only way that you will ever understand what A Course in Miracles is doing is if you try it and practice it. Because when you practice it, then you see things start to transform in ways that are clearly not based in the ego's cause and effect world. And that becomes the proof that, ooh, maybe the Course is right. And I've been living in this complete dream world. You know, I've been living in this virtual reality construct, the Matrix, only without the guns. Unless you live here in the States, and then we have all the guns too. And you know, it works. So when you put it into practice, I mean, and I think doesn't the introduction to the workbook even say that?
Yeah.
You know, you may not like what you're reading, you may disagree. That's fine. Just do the lessons. Just do the lessons.
Mm.
So yeah, we're trying to change our mind. You're right, and it's not little mind change. You know, we're not, as the expression here goes, we're not moving around the deck chairs on the ocean liner, the Titanic. You know, you can move your chair to the front so you get a better view of the iceberg. You can move it to the back of the Titanic so you don't have to see the iceberg and pretend that it's a really nice journey. But if you're on the Titanic, you're going to hit the iceberg. The Course says, get off that boat. That boat is no good. The Course says, you know, come on, something that's fun, you know.
Yeah, wow, wonderful. And isn't that the beauty of kind of like getting into a relationship with spirit, that you're not responsible for that change of mind, that you don't have to do it, that you can rely, that you just need to ask, basically.
Yes.
All you need to do is ask, and it'll be given. And actually, it's very simple.
Very simple.
Very simple. Please, or as you said, all you need is this little willingness. You just need to say, man, I'm done with this. I don't want this anymore. You don't need to know how it's changed. You don't need to do anything outside with the circumstances. You don't need to open your mouth. You just need to think, basically, I don't want this anymore. Please help me, change my mind.
We have to, not everybody, but many, many people, perhaps most of us, need to get to that moment of pain where we realize that all of our attempts to fix it, to patch it up, simply haven't worked. I mean, in this sense, A Course in Miracles really is very similar to 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, in that you have to get to the point of, I can't do it. It's not, I have to, they use the word surrender. The word surrender does not appear in A Course in Miracles, and I think that's interesting, but that's another day's discussion. But you have to get to that point. The Course does say, tolerance for pain may be high, but it is not without limit. Eventually, everyone begins to recognize, however dimly, that there must be a better way. And I think that's what it is. And so whether, you're brought to your knees begging, for some divine help, or whether you just kind of stumble into the Course, as I did at an early age, and discover that it's a better way. And so, why wouldn't I want a Ferrari rather than my old 20-year-old beat up whatever car? It's a better way. And once you experience that, there really is no turning back. I mean, I have gone probably several years in my life without actively doing A Course in Miracles. You and I were sharing, I was telling you how in my first marriage, my first wife was not a Course student, and I kind of veered away. But I never would have said to anyone, oh yeah, I did the Course and I'm done with it. I knew that it was still living in me. It was still very much there. And I knew that I would come back to it. And indeed, I'd come back to it, and then I'd, let me check out Abraham Hicks, and then, okay, back to A Course in Miracles, and, sort of playing around. In a way, it's like meeting the person that you will be spending the rest of your life with, but you're not ready to make that commitment. So, okay, I'm going to date a few other people, and I want to, what is she like? Or, what are they like? And eventually you realize, no, this is my path. This is for me. There must be a better way. And, I found it. I mean, this is what comes to you.
So it's worked. It's worked for you, and
Yes.
you wouldn't miss it.
I truly had no idea that I would be in this position. I was actually asked if I might have interest in it around 2005. And at that time, I was a psychiatrist, but I was also a screenwriter. I was writing screenplays for Hollywood.
Really?
Not getting them bought, but having some options, and it's all very exciting and glamorous. And I said, no, running the Foundation for Inner Peace, not interested, thank you very much. And in the fullness of time, like that person that you're supposed to spend your life with, it just kind of came back into my life in a way that was just clearly perfect. My movie career crashed and burned when someone shot a film of a screenplay that I was very happy about. And I actually talk about this in the upcoming book, From Nevermind to Evermind. And in the aftermath, I just knew I was done. But I didn't know what was going to come up. And what came up was, for some reason, many major changes in my life happen in the springtime. And the Jewish festival of Passover takes place usually in late March, early April. And if you don't know much about this holiday, it's about the release from slavery in order to enter into freedom, what the Hebrew Bible calls the Promised Land. So, with my screenwriting career crashing and burning, I felt like, all right, I've just been released for something. I don't know what it is. And many years before, I'd been in a very bad job. It started as a really good job at a teaching hospital and then went dark very quickly when the person I worked under went into a depression and became kind of surly and nasty. And I didn't know the way out. And, you know, and Passover came and I found the way out. And it felt like this great release. Anyway, I ended up writing a book on the story of Exodus as seen through A Course in Miracles. And when you do that, it's very powerful. I actually think Exodus was the first Course in Miracles, only they forgot the forgiveness. Because, you know, back when those tribes were around, all they did was attack each other, and there wasn't much in forgiveness and love. But it's a beautiful, literal Course in Miracles. So more shameless self-promotion. That is this book, From Plagues to Miracles, The Transformational Journey of Exodus. It was originally published by Hay House, but I have picked it up and am now publishing it. It's on Amazon. But that book came when my screenwriting career crashed and burned. And if, in retrospect, if you had asked me, would I rather have had a movie made or this book published and out in the world, hopefully for many years to come, at this point, there's no question. But I didn't know that at the time. I had to live that through. I had to discover for myself that this way isn't working and there must be a better way. And in fact, I would say to people, if there is something in your life, a job, a person, a belief system, that you keep coming at and you want it very badly, and you do all of your affirmations and your imagery, and you know, and you've turned it over to God, and it's still not happening for you, you might want to consider the possibility that that is not your path, and see what happens when you let it go. See what comes into your life when you let it go. I mean, remember, Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford, the two scribes of the Course, were academic, you know, psychology professors. What many people don't realize is they developed a personality assessment scale, the PAS, that was used by the CIA and partially funded by the CIA, which is where all of the silly rumors that, oh, the Course is the CIA. No, they got funding for this one project from the CIA because the CIA uses this test. It's like the Myers-Briggs, but only more so, to assess agents. But what does this test do? It measures the ego. It was like the supreme psychological measure for understanding the ego. So this is what they did in their day job. And then what happened? Ah, that better way came through. That better way came through. And
let me get back to one thing which I think is very, very interesting, at least I think so, for our listeners. When you are in some stuff, you know, and whatever, a divorce, or you lost your job, or like your career, screenwriting career was crashing and burning, as you said. You are in it. I mean, I like the way you said you had to live through it. So kind of like there is not much way around that. It's kind of like, you could really say the script is written. You know, it's just happening, and it has got you by the whatever part of your body you want to choose here. It's tough, and what we could say here and now is, yes, and we all know that we've gone through that stuff, and all we can say right now is, although it's tough, please at least believe this one thing: you're not guilty. You know, it's okay that you're not good right now. It's okay to suffer. It seems to be part of, as you said before, you know, there are limits to suffering, and only when we have reached them, we will, you know, let it go, or whatever miraculous thing will happen. So if you struggle right now, you know, it's okay in a sense. You're not guilty just because you struggle, just because you don't feel good. You're not guilty. That's what I want to convey right here, right now. So thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, remember, guilt is the first and fundamental emotion, if you will, that comes up from the separation. We felt guilty, and I don't think this was we as individual consciousness. I think this was what we would think of as a collective consciousness, you know, the big ego. But we felt guilty because, you know, we thought we left God. We thought we killed God. You know, we thought we were better than God. But if in that moment we had said, oh, you know, let's face that, you know, maybe we wouldn't be in this mess reliving the moment of separation. As a therapist, I also like to say we also felt terrible shame, because shame is the feeling of inferiority. Shame is the feeling of, you know, I'm worthless. And in the moment that we separate from God, how could we not feel worthless and rejected and isolated and all of that? But the nature of shame is to hide. I mean, even, you know, when you feel shame, what do? You go, you know, you turn away, you look away, you don't want to make contact with anybody else. So the ego in its shame hides, and we're still hiding. We don't want to look at everything. And then the ego says, oh, some shame, some guilt came up. That's bad. You shouldn't be feeling that. You know, shame on you for feeling shame. You better feel guilty about feeling guilt. And this is the merry-go-round, the craziness, the roller coaster ride that the ego puts us on. But your point is really good, Armin. It came to me many years ago that, you know, spirit has two ways of sort of leading us out of bondage, if you will, leading us out of the ego's world of illusion and showing us that it doesn't work. Spirit can either give us the things we think we want. You know, you get the man, woman that you've always dreamed about. You have your job. You've made your millions of dollars or, you know, euros or what have you. In order to see that that's not enough. It's never enough. You know, I've worked with people who are extremely wealthy. What do? They keep trying to make more money. You know, when you marry the person that you've been chasing after for all of that time, what happens? Well, now you have to live together. You know, it's a whole different world. So, you know, spirit teaches us by either giving us what we think we want so that we discover that it doesn't do for us what we thought, or by depriving us of what we think we want so that we suffer and realize that, oh, there must be a better way, and ultimately open up to spirit. Either way, we get to the same place. The world cannot satisfy. The world is, you know, the world is a mirage. If you're out in the desert and you see a mirage, a beautiful oasis with palm trees and springs and fountains and water, and you go to drink that water, it's not going to work. In my book, I talk about it like, you know, thirsty sailors who drink the ocean water in order to, you know, stop. No, all the ego's world does is it'll make you more thirsty, and then you die. And then you probably have to come back and do it all over again in a different body, and around and around and around it goes. So yeah, that's a great point. When you're going through scheiss, you know.
I know that word.
Mad, you know. When you're going through your stuff, it's just part of the process. It actually, it's more transformative than any spiritual book you're ever going to read, because that's where you get the learning of, now I know that's not going to work for me. And look, it's okay to have grief. Grief is a healing emotion. Anger is not. Grief says, oh, I'm experiencing a loss, and ultimately I will get to the other side of this. Because a loss means some part of my sense of self has been taken from me. Now, I would bet that anyone listening to us who is old enough can think back a year, 3 years, 5 years to something they felt terrible grief about, that, you know, they think about it now and it's kind of like, yeah, that was tough. but it doesn't destroy you anymore. That's the healing power of spirit. That's because it wasn't really you. And yes, it was hard, but you will get through that.
And you felt through it. You didn't defend, use any of those 26 defense mechanisms, or how many there are, to avoid, again, to push down all those emotions. You felt through them. You let them happen, and well, then they're gone. Simple as that, right?
When we let them go, this gets to the other half of what we started talking about at the beginning. When we remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, what happens? We discover love. But as any course student who's been doing it long enough knows, it's not the love that we think of with the ego. It's not love for a partner. It's not even love for children, because that is always subject to loss. It's not love of country or love of an idea. It's just love. And everyone, I believe, has experienced this somewhere. I think for many people, they get it most in nature. You're in a beautiful place, you're hiking a mountain, you're by the ocean, the seaside, and you're just, it's so beautiful. You're filled up, the section in chapter 18 called Beyond the Body talks about this experience. But you begin to recognize that love isn't transactional. It's not about what happens at the level of two bodies or two personalities or more. It's a force, it's an energy, it's a reality, it's who we are. Love, which created me, is what I am. Lesson 229, I think it is. So you discover a whole different feeling that is self, and with it is this profound sense of peace. So, on my better days now, having been a course student for almost 43 years, and my wife and I were just talking about this last night. We can close our eyes, and what it used to be is, I'm meditating, and the state of peace in meditation was the exception. I have my busy life, and I go take this vacation for 20 minutes as I meditate, and that was wonderful. And now I jump back onto the train of my busy life.
Yeah.
Now it's actually just the opposite. It's like I drop into this vastness, this eternal place of peace that there's no question. This is self. This is, self with a capital S. This is my real identity. And the moment I'm there, it's like, nope, I've never left. It's a oneness, and I still have work to do here. So I open my eyes and I come back, and yes, I get on the train, but it's different. It's, the beginning of lesson 155, the first paragraph talks about this. You still interact with people, but your face is more serene. You don't have the same wrinkles. And those who, are with you recognize your state, but those who, haven't gotten there yet see you as like them as well. And, and that's all just fine. So it's kind of like, we're living, we're living our lives, but it's not who we really are anymore. And that makes it okay in a very, very different way. That's the awakening to love. But in the process, yes, we go through some stuff.
Yes,
we have to. We're attached, and attachments have to be released. Here's the thing, though. If you're saying, all right, I'm going to release my attachments, I'm going to get rid of every one of them, I'm going to nuke them into, that's not spirit. That's your ego talking. Your ego is the only one that's going to drive you that hard. Spirit is gentle. When you turn your life over to the Holy Spirit, the lessons you will get are perfectly calibrated for your own readiness. And if you're not, people often say to me, why haven't I had revelation yet? Or, why haven't I had a powerful experience? Well, probably because it would provoke more fear than love. And therefore the Holy Spirit won't give it to you. And that's fine. You can go your whole life and not have a major blow away mystical experience. Or you can have, I had one at the age of 20, almost 22, And yeah, I still reference it, but you know what? It didn't do the work for me. I came back from that experience. And I read
Exactly.
my first book.
That can be another attachment, you know?
There you go. That's what it became. Every time I'd go deep, it was like, ooh, I want that. And I also simultaneously said, I'm afraid of that. There you go. It became another attachment and another aversion. Holy Spirit knows what we need.
Mm. That is very reassuring.
Mm.
I love to listen to you.
And here we are. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Doesn't leave so many questions for me to ask anymore. You're kind of making me jobless here, buddy.
That's what Holy Spirit does.
Where's the carpet from?
Let's create some drama. You know? Yeah. So, you know, when you and I were first talking about, you know, the Foundation for Inner Peace participating in this conference, we made a sort of a clear distinction. Today was about A Course in Miracles. I think on some other days, I'll talk about in the foundation with my co-president, Tam Morgan. We have some really good stories. Of course, Tam is Judy Scutch-Whitson's daughter. So we were both there at the very beginning. Tam was living there. I only lived there for a month. But, you know, Spirit arranged it that I was taking pre-med physics at Columbia and living in Judy's apartment in June of 1976, which was the month that the hardback edition of A Course in Miracles was published. And that's how I met Bill and Helen many, many times and became, you know, really very close to Bill. You know, we were both there. So we have a lot of good stories, but that'll be a different interview. And we're still hoping that Judy will do something. And, you know, Judy, she really is the last one who was on the scene. I mean,
know.
She just said to me recently, she said, you know, I do need to tape my recollections because, you know, when I'm gone, there'll be nobody here. And it's more powerful to hear me saying them and to see me than to read it on paper. And she was there when Helen scribed the Song of Prayer, which I think, you know, for those who haven't seen the two supplements, the Song of Prayer is one of the most beautiful restatements of Course principles there is. I mean, it's, you know, it'll make you cry. So, you know, Judy was on the scene for that. So she saw how Helen, you know, worked with all of this. So those will be, what do they say in the trailers, previews of coming attractions, you know, or if you're watching this later, yeah, click over to that and you'll get a different perspective. But today is about the Course. So let's just check in with Spirit and see if there's anything that we should be covering that we haven't yet.
I did already have something. I don't mind, you know, checking in, but when you said those 20 minutes of getting into that self.
Or 20 seconds.
Oh, well, could work too. I know there is not really a recipe, a how-to, you know, but could you share a little bit how, well, anyway, I'm asking, you know, how do you do it? Is it, yeah, how do you get there? Tell us.
There's a joke, very old joke, at least here in the States, that goes, you know, someone on the street comes up to a native New Yorker and says, how do you get to Carnegie Hall, you know? And the answer is practice, practice, practice. You know, the idea being, if you're going to perform at Carnegie Hall, you practice. I think it's, I really think that's the answer. I mean, once again, there isn't really a doing. You know, I actually think the Course sets us many traps that we fall into that expose our ego mind. I do not know anyone who has really done the full workbook in exactly the way it's prescribed, where they stop and take the first 5 minutes of every hour, you know, when you get into the 90s and the 120s, to stop no matter where they are, do those 5 minutes, or if they're in an inconvenient place, to, you know, run over to the restroom and get in a stall and do their 5 minutes. Even with the apps on our phones that tell us that that's not how the course was intended to do it. You know, I think I had one day in my entire time where, for whatever reason, I would just sort of, oh, I think it's on the hour. And I'd stop what I was doing, or if I was in the middle of something, I'd just mentally check in. But I didn't do it for 5 minutes. So I think that that those are, let's call them ego traps, because our ego goes, oh, I want to do it right. I want to do it the best. You know, I want to be a great course student. And it jumps in and tries to do it. You know, struggle with it. Stay with a lesson for several days if that feels like you want to get more out of it. But the moment you're expecting perfection at the level of form, at the level of the physical body, good effing luck. You're not going to find it. So I think the answer to that question is trust. You know, the Manual for Teachers tells us that the first characteristic of the teachers of God, the one that all the others rest on, is trust. And this gets back to what you and I were talking about earlier, where you know, you just have to do it to see that this crazy upside down system that tells us we're living in the matrix actually might be true. If you trust, and if you do the lessons, and if you apply them, that is to say, you know, when you get down into the shice, you know, you say, oh, this is where I need to bring in the learning. You know, this is where I need to say, I can see peace instead of this, or, you know, forgiveness is the key to happiness, or today I will judge nothing that occurs, or, you know, let me forget my brother's past today, or whatever lesson happens to come to you, much less lesson that you're on. As you apply it, that sense of peace begins to come in. Remember, peace, love, joy are our natural inheritance. They are there. We simply turn away and close our eyes tight and say we don't want to look at them. When we change our mind, quite literally, as you and I talked about earlier, when we change our mind and say, you know, I'm willing to look at them. Maybe not even I want to, but I'm willing, I'm interested. Now, Holy Spirit, Jesus can bring to us those experiences that we would have refused before. But remember, they can't teach through fear. So the moment you latch on to some idea that you think is your salvation, some person, some guru, some course teacher who you think is going to do it for you, you're probably headed for a fall. You know, because nobody else is going to do it for you. But that's okay. There is nobody else. It's all you anyway. You know, we are all the Son of God. And I know that's hard to understand for many people. And I do my best in the upcoming book to explain it in ways that aren't commonly expressed. It would take too long to share now. But you know, what if we really are all just characters in the same dream, and the mind that's dreaming it has all, you know, 7 billion different characters, but when it wakes up, you know, it's none of those. It's far more than any of them.
Okay, I'll make a proposition. Let's practice. You said practice, practice, practice. Let's practice a little bit, diving into spirit, and my emphasis would like to be, let's do it together, and also with the viewers. Would you like that?
Absolutely. And remember, there is no such thing as time, so it doesn't matter when we're doing this or when you guys are listening. We actually recorded this in 1922, and it's still here. So
great.
Yeah, let's do
So
that.
if you wanna, when we close our eyes, if you wanna guide
Join us.
us through something, that's fine too.
And I will leave it to you to bring us back, if that's okay.
Yes, it doesn't need to be long, but just for an experience.
Well, I could get lost, so, so bring me
Okay,
back.
great. Yeah, I'll bring us back.
All right, good. So please, everyone join us.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Amen.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as the Course says, it's not about words, it's about an experience. And that's what just did. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, it's. I think that's crucial because with all the talking, I think it's talking is one means, it's one way, and it's important too. But we tend to forget,
Yes.
to calm down and to go inside. I think it was in the last week I read lesson 188, and he says, going inside. The vision starts inside.
Peace of God is shining in me now.
Exactly. And enlightenment is not a change. Beg your
That was
pardon?
that was Bill Thetford's favorite lesson.
Really?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I just rediscovered it last week.
Oh, it's
It's, I don't know, with Bill, strange. I mean, I read his biography by Carol Howe, and I feel so close to him.
wonderful book.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I think Bill was the first person who really practiced the course and got to the place where he forgave everyone. And I don't think he came back. I think he's here in all of us at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think he was the first student and took it all to the end. And yeah, I'm so grateful for what he did.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, Bob, this has been just, marvelous.
Yes. Thank you so much for the idea, for all of the incredible hard work that I know goes into an event like this. The behind the scenes, nobody appreciates it, but I have been involved in conferences. And thank you to your whole team, because I've seen them on those Zoom. When I came on board early, and, this is not easy, and you make a space that allows us to come forward. I wouldn't know how to do this otherwise. You make the space. I'm happy to show up. But we all have our functions, our special functions, as chapter 25 talks about, and when we find those and follow those, rather than saying, yeah, that's good, Holy Spirit, but I'd rather be doing this. No, when we accept our special functions, we get moments like what we just had. We get holy instants.
Yeah, and what I'm learning, actually experiencing and learning right now, is that the whole idea of cooperation is becoming so important and so alive right now. And well, I guess on both levels, on the level of form and as the cause, in our minds, the world is changing, and I think there is a collective and global awakening, because otherwise we wouldn't be talking here. So it is. I think we're on a good path all together, and yes. That's our contribution, my contribution. And besides, I mean, doing the interviews, that's like the best. That's what I'm doing it for. All the other stuff, those lists and empty calendars, which I have no way of figuring out when to put which speaker on what date and hour with all the time zones. That is, well, that's that. It's that's not so much fun, but it has to be done. So we're doing it, and
we live in the world of form, so we have to function here, and that's why that's why our older brother and Holy Spirit are there to help us make, even the decisions in this world.
Exactly, and to for me, it's also important to learn that, well, yeah, there are preferences, but at the end of the day, it's all the same, and I can do those lists with just as much joy and laughter as any interview, and that's what I'm learning right now, because I have a lot of judgment on work, for example. So
that's a huge lesson right there.
It is.
There are the ego's judgments. Oh, this time interval is wonderful because I'm doing this with this person and this one. Yeah, and we all go through that. But what did the old Tao saying? Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Looks like it's the same thing. It's not.
Exactly. So wonderful. Again, thank you, Bob, and I'm looking forward to more talks with you and Tam and hopefully Judy. So yeah, I was, when I heard that the foundation was in, I said to my team, you won't believe this. This is just awesome. So thank you for cooperating, for helping. Yeah. And we'll meet again.
We sure will. All right. Many blessings, brother. Yeah.
Yes, you too, Bob. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.